may not have gone where I intended to go, but I think I have ended up where I needed to be. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. It is not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much. The life we receive is not short, but we make it so. We are not ill-provided, but use what we have wastefully. They lose the day in expectation of the night, and the night in fear of the dawn. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last by death's final constraint to realize that it has passed away before we knew it was passing. So it is. We are not given a short life, but we make it short. And we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it. Life is long, if you know how to use it. Were all the geniuses of history to focus on this single theme, they could never fully express their bafflement at the darkness of the human mind. No person would give up even an inch of their estate, and the slightest dispute with a neighbor can mean hell to pay. Yet we easily let others encroach on our lives worse. We often pave the way for those who will take it over. No person hands out their money to passers-by, but to how many do each of us hand out our lives? We're tight-fisted with property and money, yet think too little of wasting time. The one thing about which we should all be the toughest misers. Often a very old man has no other proof of his long life than his age. Life is long if you know how to use it. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. But life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. Of how much time has already gone by you take no heed. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. It is more civilized to make fun of life than to bewail it. Whatever can happen at any time can happen today. It takes the whole of life to learn how to live, and what will perhaps make you wonder more, it takes the whole of life to learn how to die. As far as I am concerned, I know that I have lost not wealth but distractions. The body's needs are few. It wants to be free from cold, to banish hunger and thirst with nourishment. If we long for anything more, we are exerting ourselves to serve our vices, not our needs. Can anything be more idiotic than certain people who boast of their foresight? They keep themselves officiously preoccupied in order to improve their lives. They spend their lives in organizing their lives. They direct their purposes with an eye to a distant future. But putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes, and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control, and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? Of all people, only those are at leisure who make time for philosophy. Only those are really alive. For they not only keep a good watch over their own lifetimes, but they annex every age to theirs. We must go for walks out of doors, so that the mind can be strengthened and invigorated by a clear sky and plenty of fresh air. At times it will acquire fresh energy from a journey by carriage and a change of scene, or from socializing and drinking freely. Occasionally we should even come to the point of intoxication, sinking into drink, but not being totally flooded by it. For it does wash away cares, and stirs the mind to its depths, and heals sorrow, just as it heals certain diseases. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what is in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. No one could endure lasting adversity if it continued to have the same force as when it first hit us. We are all tied to fortune, some by a loose and golden chain, and others by a tight one of baser metal. But what does it matter? We are all held in the same captivity, and those who have bound others are themselves in bonds, unless you think perhaps that the left-hand chain is lighter. One man is bound by high office, another by wealth. Good birth weighs down some, and a humble origin others. Some bow under the rule of other men and some under their own. Some are restricted to one place by exile, others by priesthoods. All life is a servitude, so you have to get used to your circumstances, complain about them as little as possible, and grasp whatever advantage they have to offer. No condition is so bitter that a stable mind cannot find some consolation in it, and so there is no reason for you to think that any man has lived long, because he has gray hairs or wrinkles. He has not lived long, he has existed long. For what if you should think that man had had a long voyage, who had been caught by a fierce storm as soon as he left harbor, and, swept hither and thither by a succession of winds that raged from different quarters, had been driven in a circle around the same course. Not much voyaging did he have, but much tossing about. So you must match time's swiftness with your speed in using it. And you must drink quickly, as though from a rapid stream that will not always flow. We must indulge the mind and from time to time allow it the leisure which is its food and strength. Oh, how many noble deeds of women are lost in obscurity. All things that are still to come lie in uncertainty. Live straightway. So let those people go on weeping and wailing, whose self-indulgent minds have been weakened by long prosperity. Let them collapse at the threat of the most trivial injuries. But let those who have spent all their years suffering disasters endure the worst afflictions with a brave and resolute staunchness. Everlasting misfortune does have one blessing, that it ends up by toughening those whom it constantly afflicts. Believe me, it is the sign of a great man, and one who is above human error, not to allow his time to be frittered away. He has the longest possible life simply because whatever time was available he devoted entirely to himself. So it is. We are not given a short life, but we make it short. And we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it. People are delighted to accept pensions and gratuities, for which they hire out their labor or their support or their services. But nobody works out the value of time. Men use it lavishly as if it cost nothing. But if death threatens these same people, you will see them praying to their doctors. If they are in fear of capital punishment, you will see them prepared to spend their all to stay alive. You must set your hands to tasks which you can finish or at least hope to finish, and avoid those which get bigger as you proceed, and do not cease where you had intended. Seneca, on the shortness of life. You are living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. You don't notice how much time has already passed, but squander it, as though you had a full and overflowing supply, though all the while that very day which you are devoting to somebody or something may be your last. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Why do we complain of nature? She has shown herself kindly. Life, if you know how to use it, is long. But one man is possessed by an avarice that is insatiable, another by a toilsome devotion to tasks that are useless. One man is besotted with wine, another is paralyzed by sloth. One man is exhausted by an ambition that always hangs upon the decision of others, another, driven on by the greed of the trader, is led over all lands and all seas, by the hope of gain. Some are tormented by a passion for war, and are always either bent upon inflicting danger upon others, or concerned about their own. Some there are who are worn out by voluntary servitude in a thankless attendance upon the great. Many are kept busy either in the pursuit of other men's fortune, or in complaining of their own. Many, following no fixed aim, shifting and inconstant and dissatisfied, are plunged by their fickleness into plans that are ever new. Some have no fixed principle by which to direct their course, but fate takes them unawares while they loll and yawn. So, surely does it happen that I cannot doubt the truth of that utterance, which the greatest of poets delivered with all the seeming of an oracle. The part of life we really live is small. 5, for all the rest of existence is not life, but merely time. Vices beset us and surround us on every side, and they do not permit us to rise anew and lift up our eyes for the discernment of truth, but they keep us down. When once they have overwhelmed us, and we are chained to lust, their victims are never allowed to return to their true selves. If ever they chance to find some release, like the waters of the deep sea which continue to heave even after the storm is past, they are tossed about, and no rest from their lusts abides. Think you that I am speaking of the wretches whose evils are admitted? Look at those whose prosperity men flock to behold. They are smothered by their blessings. To how many are riches a burden? From how many do eloquence and the daily straining to display their powers draw forth blood? How many are pale from constant pleasures? To how many does the throng of clients that crowd about them leave no freedom? In short, run through the list of all these men from the lowest to the highest. This man desires an advocate. 6, this one answers the call. That one is on trial. That one defends him. That one gives sentence. No one asserts his claim to himself. Everyone is wasted for the sake of another. Ask about the men whose names are known by heart, and you will see that these are the marks that distinguish them. A cultivates B and B cultivates C. No one is his own master. And then certain men show the most senseless indignation. They complain of the insolence of their superiors, because they were too busy to see them when they wished an audience. But can anyone have the hardihood to complain of the pride of another, when he himself has no time to attend to himself? After all, no matter who you are, The great man does sometimes look toward you, even if his face is insolent. He does sometimes condescend to listen to your words. He permits you to appear at his side. But you never deign to look upon yourself, to give ear to yourself. There is no reason, therefore, to count anyone in debt for such services, seeing that, when you performed them, you had no wish for another's company, but could not endure your own. The time of the actual enjoyment is short and swift, and made much shorter through their own fault, for they dash from one pleasure to another, and cannot stay steady in one desire. We are in the habit of saying that it was not in our power to choose the parents who were allotted to us, that they were given to us by chance. But we can choose whose children we would like to be. You should rather suppose that those are involved in worthwhile duties, who wish to have daily as their closest friends, Zeno, Pythagoras, Democritus and all the other high priests of liberal studies, and Aristotle and Theophrastus. None of these will be too busy to see you, none of these will not send his visitor away happier and more devoted to himself, none of these will allow anyone to depart empty-handed. They are at home to all mortals by night and by day. Only a mind that is deeply stirred can utter something noble, and beyond the power of others. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Learning how to live takes a whole life, and, which may surprise you more, it takes a whole life to learn how to die. Il magir ostacolo el vivir e latisa, chi dipend dal demoni e consuma lagi. All those who call you to themselves draw you away from yourself. However, the two things must be mingled and varied, solitude and joining a crowd. The one will make us long for people and the other for ourselves, and each will be a remedy for the other. Solitude will cure our distaste for a crowd, and a crowd will cure our boredom with solitude. Of all people only those are at leisure who make time for philosophy, only those are really alive. For they not only keep a good watch over their own lifetimes, but they annex every age to theirs. All the years that have passed before them are added to their own. Unless we are very ungrateful, all those distinguished founders of holy creeds were born for us, and prepared for us a way of life. By the toil of others we are led into the presence of things which have been brought from darkness into light. We are excluded from no age, but we have access to them all, and if we are prepared in loftiness of mind to pass beyond the narrow confines of human weakness, there is a long period of time through which we can roam. Life is divided into three parts: what was, what is and what shall be. Of these three periods, the present is short, the future is doubtful, and the past alone is certain. So you must not think a man has lived long because he has white hair and wrinkles. He has not lived long, just existed long. For suppose you should think that a man had had a long voyage who had been caught in a raging storm as he left harbor, and carried hither and thither and driven round and round in a circle by the rage opposing winds. He did not have a long voyage, just a long tossing about. It takes all of our life to learn how to live, and something that may surprise you more, it takes just as long to learn how to die. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Lucius Annius Seneca. I shall never be ashamed to go to a bad author for a good quotation. Sorrowers tend to avoid what they are most fond of, and try to give vent to their grief. We are, therefore, seeking how the mind can follow a smooth and steady course, well disposed to itself, happily regarding its own condition, and with no interruption to this pleasure, but remaining in a state of peace, with no ups and downs. That will be tranquility. Oh, what darkness does great prosperity cast over our minds. Still, you must especially avoid those who are gloomy and always lamenting, and who grasp at every pretext for complaint. Though a man's loyalty and kindness may not be in doubt, a companion who is agitated and groaning about everything is an enemy to peace of mind. I imagine many people could have achieved wisdom if they had not imagined they had already achieved it, if they had not dissembled about some of their own characteristics, and turned a blind eye to others. So it is inevitable that life will be not just very short but very miserable, for those who acquire by great toil what they must keep by greater toil. Can anything be sillier than the point of view of certain people? I mean those who boast of their foresight. They keep themselves very busily engaged in order that they may be able to live better. They spend life in making ready to live. They form their purposes with a view to the distant future. Yet postponement is the greatest waste of life. It deprives them of each day as it comes. It snatches from them the present by promising something hereafter. The greatest hindrance to living is expectancy, which depends upon the morrow and wastes today. You dispose of that which lies in the hands of fortune. You let go that which lies in your own. There is no great genius without some touch of madness. So the man who restrains himself within the bounds set by nature will not notice poverty, The man who exceeds these bounds will be pursued by poverty however rich he. Life's like a play. It's not the length but the excellence of the acting that matters. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. Our minds must relax, they will rise better and keener after a rest. Just as you must not force fertile farmland, as uninterrupted productivity will soon exhaust it, so constant effort will sap our mental vigor, while a short period of rest and relaxation will restore our powers. So you must not think a man has lived long because he has white hair and wrinkles. He has not lived long, just existed long. For suppose you should think that a man had had a long voyage who had been caught in a raging storm as he left harbor, and carried hither and thither and driven round and round in a circle by the rage of opposing winds. He did not have a long voyage, just a long tossing about. Nothing happens to the wise man against his expectation. It is a small part of life we really live. Indeed, all the rest is not life but merely time. But nothing delights the mind so much as fond and loyal friendship. What a blessing it is to have hearts that are ready and willing to receive all your secrets in safety, with whom you are less afraid to share knowledge of something than keep it to yourself, whose conversation soothes your distress, whose advice helps you make up your mind, whose cheerfulness dissolves your sorrow, whose very appearance cheers you up. So what you need is not those more radical remedies which we have now finished with, blocking yourself here, being angry with yourself there, threatening yourself sternly somewhere else, but the final treatment, confidence in yourself, and the belief that you are on the right path, and not led astray by the many tracks which cross yours of people who are hopelessly lost, though some are wandering not far from the true path. So it is, we are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it. Just as when ample and princely wealth falls to a bad owner it is squandered in a moment, but wealth however modest, if entrusted to a good custodian, increases with use. So our lifetime extends amply, if you manage it properly. Putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes, and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control, and abandoning what lies in yours. Everyone hurries his life on and suffers from a yearning for the future, and a weariness of the present. But he who bestows all of his time on his own needs, who plans out every day as if it were his last, neither longs for nor fears the morrow. There is nothing the busy man is less busied with than living. There is nothing that is harder to learn. I've come across people who say that there is a sort of inborn restlessness in the human spirit, and an urge to change one's abode, for man is endowed with a mind which is changeable and unsettled, nowhere at rest. It darts about and directs its thoughts to all places known and unknown, a wanderer which cannot endure repose and delights chiefly in novelty. We are in the habit of saying that it was not in our power to choose the parents who were allotted to us, that they were given to us by chance, but we can choose whose children we would like to be. There are households of the noblest intellects. Choose the one into which you wish to be adopted, and you will inherit not only their name, but their property too. Nor will this property need to be guarded meanly or grudgingly. The more it is shared out, the greater it will become. Why not stop trying to prevent posterity being silent about you? You were born to die, and a silent funeral is less bothersome. Living is the least important activity of the preoccupied man. The preoccupied become aware of it only when it is over. Finally, it is generally agreed that no activity can be successfully pursued by an individual who is preoccupied. Everlasting misfortune does have one blessing, that it ends up by toughening those whom it constantly afflicts, since the mind when distracted absorbs nothing deeply, but rejects everything which is, so to speak, crammed into it. I see that you have come to the last stage of human life. You are close upon your 100th year, or even beyond. Come now, hold an audit of your life. Reckon how much of your time has been taken up by a money lender, how much by a mistress, a patron, a client, quarreling with your wife, punishing your slaves, dashing about the city on your social obligations. Consider also the diseases which we have brought on ourselves, and the time too which has been unused. You will find that you have fewer years than you reckon. Call to mind when you ever had a fixed purpose, how few days have passed as you had planned, when you were ever at your own disposal, when your face wore its natural expression, when your mind was undisturbed. What work you have achieved in such a long life. How many have plundered your life when you were unaware of your losses? how much you have lost through groundless sorrow, foolish joy, greedy desire, the seductions of society, how little of your own was left to you. You will realize that you are dying prematurely. In guarding their fortune, men are often closeted. Yet, when it comes to the matter of wasting time, in the case of the one thing in which it is right to be miserly, they show themselves most prodigal. Reasons for anxiety will never be lacking. Whether born of prosperity or of wretchedness, life pushes on in a succession of engrossments. We shall always pray for leisure, but never enjoy it. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. Nothing satisfies greed, but even a little satisfies nature. Prosperity does not elevate the sage, and adversity does not depress him, for he has always made the effort to rely as much as possible on himself, and to derive all delight from himself. Everyone hustles his life along, and is troubled by a longing for the future and weariness of the present. The man who spends all his time on his own needs, who organizes every day as though it were his last, neither longs for nor fears the next day. For how little have we lost, when the two finest things of all will accompany us wherever we go, universal nature and our individual virtue. The body's needs are few. It wants to be free from cold, to banish hunger and thirst with nourishment. If we long for anything more, we are exerting ourselves to serve our vices, not our needs. For what can be above the man who is above fortune? But every great and overpowering grief must take away the capacity to choose words, since it often stifles the voice itself. This evil of taking our cue from others has become so deeply ingrained that even that most basic feeling, grief, degenerates into imitation. This will not be a gentle prescription for healing, but cautery and the knife. What shall I achieve? That a soul which has conquered so many miseries will be ashamed to worry about one more wound in a body which already has so many scars. You can put up with a change of place if only the place is changed. No man has been shattered by the blows of fortune, unless he was first deceived by her favors. Though all the brilliant intellects of the ages were to concentrate upon this one theme, never could they adequately express their wonder at this dense darkness of the human mind. Men do not suffer anyone to seize their estates, and they rush to stones and arms, if there is even the slightest dispute about the limit of their lands. Yet they allow others to trespass upon their life, nay, they themselves even lead in those who will eventually possess it. No one is to be found who is willing to distribute his money. Yet among how many does each one of us distribute his life? In guarding their fortune, men are often closeted. Yet, when it comes to the matter of wasting time, in the case of the one thing in which it is right to be miserly, they show themselves most prodigal. And so I should like to lay hold upon someone from the company of older men and say, I see that you have reached the farthest limit of human life. You are pressing hard upon your 100th year, or are even beyond it. Come now, recall your life and make a reckoning. Consider how much of your time was taken up with a moneylender, how much with a mistress, how much with a patron, how much with a client, how much in wrangling with your wife, how much in punishing your slaves, how much in rushing about the city on social duties. Add the diseases which we have caused by our own acts, add, too, the time that has lain idle and unused. You will see that you have fewer years to your credit than you count. Look back in memory and consider when you ever had a fixed plan. How few days have passed as you had intended, when you were ever at your own disposal, when your face ever wore its natural expression, when your mind was ever unperturbed. What work you have achieved in so long a life. How many have robbed you of life, when you were not aware of what you were losing? How much was taken up in useless sorrow, in foolish joy, in greedy desire, in the allurements of society? How little of yourself was left to you? You will perceive that you are dying before your season 7. What, then, is the reason of this? You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. Of how much time has already gone by you take no heed. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. You have all the fears of mortals and all the desires of immortals. You will hear many men saying, after my 50th year I shall retire into leisure. My 60th year shall release me from public duties. And what guarantee, pray, have you that your life will last longer? Who will suffer your course to be just as you plan it? Are you not ashamed to reserve for yourself only the remnant of life, and to set apart for wisdom only that time which cannot be devoted to any business? How late it is to begin to live just when we must cease to live. What foolish forgetfulness of mortality to postpone wholesome plans to the 50th and 60th year, and to intend to begin life at a point to which few have attained. Life will follow the path it began to take, and will neither reverse nor check its course. It will cause no commotion to remind you of its swiftness, but glide on quietly. It will not lengthen itself for a king's command or a people's favor, as it started out on its first day. So it will run on, nowhere pausing or turning aside. What will be the outcome? You have been preoccupied while life hastens on. Meanwhile death will arrive, and you have no choice in making yourself available for that. Life's finest day for wretched mortals here is always first to flee. You will notice that the most powerful and highly stationed men let drop remarks in which they pray for leisure, praise it, and rate it higher than all their blessings. The busy man is busy with everything except living. There is nothing that is more difficult to learn how to do right. In consequence, when the pleasures have been removed which busy people derive from their actual activities, the mind cannot endure the house, the solitude, the walls, and hates to observe its own isolation. From this arises that boredom and self-dissatisfaction, that turmoil of a restless mind and gloomy and grudging endurance of our leisure, especially when we are ashamed to admit the reasons for it, and our sense of shame drives the agony inward, and our desires are trapped in narrow bounds without escape and stifle themselves. From this arise melancholy and mourning and 1,000 vacillations of a wavering mind, buoyed up by the birth of hope, and sickened by the death of it. From this arises the state of mind of those who loathe their own leisure, and complain that they have nothing to do, and the bitterest envy at the promotion of others. For unproductive idleness nurtures malice, and because they themselves could not prosper, they want everyone else to be ruined. Then from this dislike of others' success and despair of their own, their minds become enraged against fortune, complain about the times, retreat into obscurity, and brood over their own sufferings, until they become sick and tired of themselves. We are not given a short life, but we make it short. And we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it. No man is despised by another unless he is first despised by himself. An abject and debased mind is susceptible to such insult, but if a man stirs himself to face the worst of disasters and defeats the evils which overwhelm others, then he wears those very sorrows like a sacred badge. For we are naturally disposed to admire more than anything else the man who shows fortitude in adversity. It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough, and it has been given in sufficiently generous measure to allow the accomplishment of the very greatest things, if the whole of it is well invested. But when it is squandered in luxury and carelessness, when it is devoted to no good end, forced at last by the ultimate necessity, we perceive that it has passed away before we were aware that it was passing. So it is the life we receive is not short, but we make it so, nor do we have any lack of it, but are wasteful of it. Just as great and princely wealth is scattered in a moment when it comes into the hands of a bad owner, while wealth, however limited, if it is entrusted to a good guardian, increases by use, so our life is amply long for him who orders it properly. We are all tied to fortune, some by a loose and golden chain, and others by a tight one of baser metal. But what does it matter? We are all held in the same captivity, and those who have bound others are themselves in bonds, unless you think perhaps that the left-hand chain is lighter. One man is bound by high office, another by wealth, good birth weighs down some, and a humble origin others, some bow under the rule of other men and some under their own. Some are restricted to one place by exile, others by priesthoods. All life is a servitude, but life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. When they come to the end of it, the poor wretches realize too late that for all this time they have been preoccupied in doing nothing. The greatest hindrance to living is expectancy, which depends upon the morrow and wastes today. Unless we are complete ingrates, the lives of all those men that preceded us should be seen as sacred. Their collective existence paved the way for our own time on earth, because, believe me, it takes a great man and one who has risen far above human weaknesses, not to allow any of his time to be filched from him, and it follows that the life of such a man is very long, because he has devoted wholly to himself whatever time he has had. None of it lay neglected and idle, none of it was under the control of another, for, guarding it most grudgingly, he found nothing that was worthy to be taken in exchange for his time. And so that man had time enough, but those who have been robbed of much of their life by the public have necessarily had too little of it. Often it is better to hide an illness from the patient, because just the mere awareness of a disease can bring about death. Whatever is best for a human being lies outside human control. It can be neither given nor taken away. The world you see, nature's greatest and most glorious creation, and the human mind which gazes and wonders at it, and is the most splendid part of it, these are our own everlasting possessions, and will remain with us as long as we ourselves remain. All those who engage you in their business disengage you from yourself. A gray-haired, wrinkled man has not necessarily lived long, More accurately, he has existed long. You become ex equo ad caelum morigitur aces, paribus intervalis omnia divina ab omnibus humanus, distant from whatever point on the earth's surface you look up to heaven. The same distance lies between the realms of gods and men. The best compromise between love and good sense is both to feel longing and to conquer it. The longer people extend their colonnades, the higher they build their towers, the wider they stretch their walks, the deeper they dig their summer grottos, the more massively they raise the roofs of their dining halls, so much the more will there be to cut off the sight of heaven. Tyrannius was an old man who, after he turned 90, was released from his official duties by an act of Caesar. He had the idea to be laid out on his bed, surrounded by family, and to receive visitors as if he was dead. The entire household mourned the passing of its master, and the sorrow was only lifted when the crazy loon returned to his normal routine of idle busyness. Hard to believe that a man could become so bored as to get a thrill out of being dead for a few days. Can anything be sillier than the point of view of certain people? I mean those who boast of their foresight. They keep themselves very busily engaged in order that they may be able to live better. They spend life in making ready to live. They form their purposes with a view to the distant future. Yet postponement is the greatest waste of life. It deprives them of each day as it comes. It snatches from them the present by promising something hereafter. The greatest hindrance to living is expectancy, which depends upon the morrow and wastes today. You dispose of that which lies in the hands of fortune. You let go that which lies in your own. Whither do you look? At what goal do you aim? All things that are still to come lie in uncertainty. Live straightway.